Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road. Our guest today is Jody Martinez, head coach of the women's basketball program at Bethel College. Coach Martinez is going to share his story of restoration in a very transparent manner. And he's going to talk about the hallmark of Christianity, and that's forgiveness. To forgive means to let go. You see, when others sin against us, we have a tendency to hold on. But the Spirit of the forgiver in us, Jesus Christ, prompts us to let go because all sin has been paid at the cross of Jesus Christ. As you listen to Coach today, I encourage you to ask the Holy Spirit to examine your heart and see if there's anything that you need to forgive. Coach Jody Martinez, or Martinez, you're going to have to explain that. It's so good to have you here on the Restoration Road.
Well, Mitch, thanks. I just appreciate this time. Whenever I can talk about life and testimony, I'm all for it.
Well, tell us about your name first.
Well, you know, it's an unusual name. I joke about it as much as other people do. Martinez, and you know, when they see it spelled out, they think, oh, that's a Mexican. And then when they see Jody, they think it's a female Mexican. And so I'm quite of a disappointment to many people in this world that they see a 6'7", you know, somewhat albino Mexican-looking guy. But no, it's one of those crazy things that when I was born, my biological father was in prison, and my mother was dating a Mexican at the time. And after I was born in April of '68, the two of them end up getting married, and then through the marriage, he officially adopted me, changed my name to the last name being Martinez.
Well, talk about growing up. You grew up in the inner city of South Bend?
Yes, inner city South Bend. It was my adopted father, Frank. He left the family. It was a rough upbringing, very abusive home. You know, witnessing my mom get verbally abused as well as physically abused. And of course, then we had our issues too as children. I had a younger brother and younger sister, two-bedroom home. And then he left us when I was in 6th grade, and then the divorce was final, 8th or 9th grade. And then my mom unfortunately had a rough upbringing too. We can talk about that later, with my biological father, with organized crime. She quit school when she was in 9th grade, so she didn't really have the education. But growing up in inner city South Bend made me tough. It made me, I was a very, very angry child because of the upbringing. You know, not too many people can be out there and say that they had a fist fight with their dad. I hope they haven't. It's not one of the best things you ever did. But it came to a point where that was the turning point in our family when I just had enough of him beating up my mom.
Do you remember that vividly?
To this day. I remember the scene of him breaking the door down to come in because the divorce was done. He came, he was drunk. The sad thing is I was in the living room with my brother and sister. My mom just got out of the shower, and he broke the door open in the bathroom and just started hitting her. And my sister was young, and she was, you know, screaming for help, and it was just a rage that came in me, and I attacked him, and we got at each other, and thankfully that he was drunk. But I can remember the scene. I had him on the ground, had him in a chokehold, and which was weird because I had him in a chokehold and I wasn't going to let go. He started turning colors, and my mom ended up hitting me, get me to get off of him. So, but it's one of those things, you know, abusive woman, abusive wife. That's something that they're used to. And
when they get abused, they sometimes they enable.
Yeah. And it was difficult. And I told my dad that my brother called the cops, and he's got a choice: either stay here or get out. And then he left, and he never came back.
Wow. And have you had any contact?
Yes,
since?
I reached out to everybody that was part of the big picture, and I have met my biological father. I finally met him when I was 27. Before I met him, I went to my adopted dad, Frank Martinez, and sat down with him in his business and just told him that I was going to meet my real dad, my biological dad, and that I'll always carry his name, though. I'll always carry the Martinez name because that's who I am. He had the burden of trying to raise me up, knowing I'm not his kid, and I just want to let him know I loved him, and that he asked me, why do I want to meet my biological father? And I told him that it's time, I need to meet someone who created me. I mean, he was responsible, even though my mom and him were bad people. It brought in something good. And then I shared my just salvation with my adopted dad, Frank. He accepted Christ in his 2-room, and we were very tight today.
Wow.
Very tight today.
Wow.
My stepmom was a turning point in his life. It's an awesome journey right now. And it all started, you know, when I accepted Christ at age 24. My wife had a big part in that story, and I just feel like I've been blessed 1,000-fold in my journey. Am I perfect? No way. Am I a sinner? Yes. Do I screw up still? Yes. And as man, we're going to screw up.
You're on Restoration Road.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah, and sometimes my steps seem to go way back.
You got long legs.
Little stride here, but no, it's been good.
I assume you were an athlete in high school. Were you tall right away? Or?
No, that's a funny story. I was 5'9" as a freshman in high school.
Really?
I was 5'9", then I was 6'1" my sophomore year, 6'3" junior year, 6'6" senior year, 6'8" freshman year in college. Funny story about the basketball side, I got cut my first 3 years.
Of basketball?
Of basketball, yes.
First 3 years of what?
High school.
You're kidding me.
No. And I stayed with it because one, I don't like to quit, but two, I knew my talent wasn't going to be in basketball as I continued my growth spurt. I gave up baseball when I was 18. I was okay at baseball. I pitched and played second. But my height kept going, and people kept saying that you're going to be a basketball player. But I kept getting cut. And the amazing thing is the guy who cut me in high school, I ended up playing my senior year and got MVP and got scholarships. He ended up coming to Bethel my sophomore year to finish my 3 years of college as my coach.
Really?
Mike Lightfoot, yes.
How did you select Bethel? It was close to home.
I actually committed to a school in Missouri first. I came back and told Lightfoot, my high school coach, that I made a verbal commitment to Southwest Missouri State, and I didn't sign anything, but I committed there. Homer Drew, as many people may know from Valparaiso days, was the head coach at Bethel at the time in the 80s. And he came to my high school at Marion, got me out of class, which I really liked, and we walked around the track for 2 hours. And he basically convinced me that leaving close to home may be a mistake because I won't have any support network. And that he felt like he's here today to tell me that I'm supposed to be at Bethel. So I visited Bethel, and Homer was a great con man. He would be good. He could sell these cars probably in here, which probably wouldn't be approved by you. But he convinced me Bethel College, and I was not saved. I mean, I didn't have that commitment yet. Bethel is a Christian school, missionary background, and it was difficult at the time.
So he left after your freshman year?
He left after my freshman year. He asked all the freshmen to go with him. I met with the senior vice president, Dr. Dennis Embrecht, who's an unbelievable man. He sat me down and he said that one of the candidates they're considering is my high school coach. And I said, if you bring in Mike Lightfoot, I'll stay.
What an opportunity.
So I stayed.
And how did it go those next 3 years for you as a player?
Yeah, Coach Lightfoot made me a captain right away because I played for him my senior in high school. Mike Lightfoot was my father figure. He was there for me. So I knew if he was coming to Bethel, he was only going to make me a better man. And he was a big part, too, of planting the seed of salvation, along with my wife, Sonia. When I saw her and how her parents lived, I wanted to be like them.
Wow.
And they're strong Christians.
And then how'd your senior year go with Coach Lightfoot?
Senior year, my junior year and senior year were great. I got engaged in January of '90 to Sonia. It was the night before a big conference game, and so we got engaged on Friday night, and we played Saturday, and we lost by 40 points. So losing by 40 points is a memory that you always will keep.
Yes.
Especially when it was your only loss. And so during that game, I fouled out, which I usually didn't do that. And I fouled out by playing only 5 minutes. I had a foul called on me on the jump ball. They said I threw my elbow out. And then
Have you ever seen that?
No, but it should be called more. If you really watch a jump ball, especially in the NBA, notice the arm that goes out to try to just to bump them enough to slow them down.
Sure.
And so I've always done it. I might have probably did it too much. or the coach prepared the refs that I do that.
Oh.
But it is a technique that you can do, and
It only gets called once every 100.
or overtime, yeah. So I get a foul there, and I get a foul in the very next possession. I have 2 fouls within the first minute, and I sit the bench. We're down 25 by half, and then I couldn't get anything going. And so then he uses the platform. He threatened players. He threatened us to run, kind of the old Rick Pitino Kentucky mentality. You're going to run, and no one else got engaged. It was kind of funny.
Did you decide to play semi-pro then?
We got engaged in January. First contact came in February. Coach Life got a call from Australia representatives, and they wanted me to leave that instant. They didn't want me to finish the season to go to Australia to play in their league. And so then I knew that opportunities could happen. And sure enough, I got an NBA invite to Chicago in the summer of '90 to the Combine. And so that began the whole process. Agents were there. I ended up getting an agent from Kansas City area. We were a packaged group to play internationally, and we got placed in Mexico, of all places.
Where you were a celebrity.
Oh yeah. So we joked about the albino look and those kind of things, and so it began the story again of my name, And at that time, though, I didn't really have a strong testimony because I'm 22 years old, and I didn't make a real serious commitment until I was 24.
I want to hear how that happened.
What happened was when you negotiate with the agent and the owners of the club team in Chihuahua, my contract was I'm getting married in September. They're going to have to fly me back Thursday, fly both of us back Sunday, and that she was going to live with me and travel with me. That was the contract we signed. And so, I get there, I start playing in the summer of '90, and still have no information on my flights, still have no information on when I'm going back, and it's become a battle, and then trying to get the owner on the same page as the general manager as well as your agent, it started getting ugly. The owner did not want my wife to come back. And so my agent had to fly in from Kansas City, and then they negotiated, and what they finally came up to an agreement was they could fly Sonia back. She could, we could live together, of course, but be in the same location, but she could not travel when we're on the road. And back then, it's kind of like what the NBA does now. When you had a road trip, you're on the road for quite a long time. When I played, it was 10 days on the road, 10 days home.
Oh, my goodness.
So when I'm on the road for 10 days, then Sonia's by herself.
Right.
And, of course, that wasn't going to fly.
Right.
And so by the end, it couldn't work out because I was stern that my wife had to be with me. I wasn't. My first commitment in January was to get married. It wasn't basketball anymore. Basketball came afterwards. Now, if it was reversed, we probably would have never got engaged at that time or got married in September. We probably would have postponed the wedding. So, I had to go with my gut and the spirit, just it is what it is. Came back. When I came back, the CBA was in existence then.
Sure.
So I ended up going to Columbus Horizons in Ohio, and that lasted a weekend because when they offered me the contract, there was no way we could survive as a married couple.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, the CBA the salary cap is not close to anything.
Right.
So
how did it lead to you surrendering your life to Christ?
So then what happened was we get back home, we get married. We were at church one Sunday in January of '92, and the preacher was talking about forgiveness. And what happened is it just hit my heart. And at the end, he did an altar call. And guys, I know this may sound weird, but it's true. Is all of a sudden I'm walking out of my pew, and I reached for my wife's hand, and I grabbed it. And it was during the prayer. And she says, "What are you doing?" Because I have no idea, but you're coming with me. Wherever I'm going, you're going with me. I have no idea what's going on right now. And I ended up going right up to the pastor while he was praying. And I said, I want to accept Christ as my Savior.
Oh, my.
And so church is watching. He stops praying. He prays over me. And, of course, we're crying. And I said, I need to learn to forgive people. And so that was in '92.
Wow.
Because I had not forgiven my mom or anyone since '88, because 1988 was the first time I found out that I was adopted. I was 20 years old.
Oh.
So I grew up for 20 years thinking that I was actually a Mexican-American and that Frank was my real dad for 20 years.
Oh, my goodness.
So it all came out then.
So you like the parable of the unforgiving debtor, you had to receive forgiveness in order to issue forgiveness to others. And so when you receive the spirit of the forgiver, you now become a forgiver. That's the big change.
That was the biggest change, because in '88, the summer of '88 was after my sophomore year, is when I came home drunk, and I was just, I mean, I was plastered. And I woke up, but I was having these dreams that I'm living a lie. My life's a lie. And so I talked to my mom the next day about it, and she just started crying. And then she told me that Frank was not my real dad. And so then I was really upset with her, angry at her. And she said, "You want to talk about it?" I go, "No, I want to know who my real dad is. What's his name?" So she told me his name. Then I said, "Well, what does he do for a living?" And she says, "Well, he's a preacher." I go, "Was he married?" And she goes, "Yes." I go, "So you had an affair with a married man who's a preacher, and I'm a result of sin." I said, "If that's the case, I'm going to live a life of sin." And I left home. So I left home for a couple of days, and then, I mean, of course, eventually I had to come back and get some clothes and eat and live. And so I came back, and she wanted to talk, and I said, "No, I don't want to talk anymore." I said, "You're my mom, and you're my mom, and I respect that, but I'm going to call Coach Lightfoot. I quit school. I'm not going back to college anymore." I said, "I'm going to go get a job, and I'll be out of here soon." I said, I'm not going to live this life." And so I started living a crazy lifestyle. And then I drove to Coach Lightfoot's house and basically told him I quit and that I'm not going to play for him anymore. I wanted to do it face-to-face, not over the phone.
And how do you respond to that?
He actually brought a Bible out, and I said, "You're not going to open up the Bible. I do not want to listen to one word about preaching." And he held the Bible the whole time he talked to me. He went back to my high school days, and then he just basically said that basketball was my life, that's what got me out of the streets, and that I would be making a big mistake if I was going back to living that way. You know, that if basketball still means anything to me, just come back and play. And I agreed to do that for him, but I told him he couldn't preach to me. And so he asked if he could pray, and I said, "All right, I'll let you pray." And so he prayed, and he basically prayed the verse Jeremiah 29:11 after I learned where it was in the Bible. And it was a blessing too, Mitch, because when I did, I went back to Bethel for my junior year. Within a week, he introduced me to Sonia.
He did?
So, because she transferred in my junior year. So within a week, he introduced me to Sonia, and we've been together since.
So he prayed, "I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope in the future."
Yeah, and the key word was hope.
Yeah, you need
and the
hope.
plan, but the bigger thing was hope. That's the thing I clinged to. I didn't really grasp the God's plan thing, but I did grab hope. And that was like the last thing I needed to hear to move on. And so fast forward now to '92, I went forward and asked if I could get baptized on my birthday. I told him that my Catholic faith, I respect it, but I want to start over. I want a fresh start. I want to live for God. And so I got baptized on April 8th, '92 at age 24.
Terrific.
And then through that was in '94. I still had trouble forgiving. I still had my rough side of me. I didn't forgive my mom till May of '95. And then she told me the rest of the story. And the rest of the story was about him being in organized crime. I said, "Well, I thought you said he was a preacher." Because he's a preacher now. But when I was with your father, he was in organized crime. I said, "Why didn't you tell me at the beginning?" Because, "Well, I was trying to, but you're too stubborn, and you didn't want to listen to me anymore." I said, "Forgive me. You're right. I was stubborn. I was arrogant.
Hard heart affects our listening.
I had no heart. I mean, I was calloused. I was living Jody's life." And so I said, "Give me the whole story." And so she gave me bits of it. She gave me the book. There's a book on him called The Enforcer. But he was in organized crime. He was married. My mom was his mistress. And so and they got caught. He was like top 10 most wanted in the FBI in '67. They got captured. They got caught down in Evansville, Kentucky area. She had a choice to go to prison or testify against him in the unit. So she testified against them, and they were sent to prison. So on his way to prison, he got saved by a prison warden.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And so then when he got to prison, when he got sentenced for life, he started reading the Bible, and he made a commitment to Christ, and he started preaching in the prison system. And then every year, being a federal prisoner, you got to get interviewed every year through this whatever panel they call and see if he's changing at all, if the system's working. And he would tell them the system doesn't work, the Bible works, faith in God works. And so he was able to preach to them. And so he just became one big preacher in the prison system, and he ended up getting released in the 70s. He was supposed to serve life.
And what did he do when he got out?
He became a prison evangelist. So he goes into death row and tries to witness to those individuals before their last
Incredible.
time.
So
His story's amazing.
So you're 27 when you go see him?
So May '95, my mom and I talked, and basically about forgiveness. And I told her I want to meet my dad. So she made a call to a friend of his who made the call to him, who lived, at that time was living in Arkansas. And they came to Indiana, him and his wife, Carolyn.
How'd that go?
It was good. We met in the parking lot. It was a restaurant in McKinley called Riviera. And I drove into the parking lot. And as I got out of my car, he was standing in the parking lot. And I went to reach my hand and say, I'm Jody. And he wouldn't shake my hand. And so he gave me a hug instead. And he whispers in my ear, he goes, Jody, I just want to let you know that you're not born in sin. You were born in love. I loved your mother. So
how'd that make you feel?
Oh, it touched me. It's been fun to tell the story. I get a little emotional now, just because I have 2 daughters. So at the time, I didn't know if it was him just talking. But
yeah, I say that to my girls sometime. I said, when they get teary-eyed, I said, "Are you crying because of what I'm saying, or is it because I'm your dad and I'm just talking?" Right. And sometimes they'll say, "It's just because you're my dad and you're talking."
Yeah, it takes a different meaning now being a father and having 2 daughters and trying to live a life of impact and knowing where you came from, you didn't have it. It's tough.
Well, how'd you become coach of the Bethel Pilots?
Well, when I went back to school for my 2-year teaching degree, it took me 2 years. I was an assistant for Coach Lightfoot. And my wife was the head coach for girls.
Really?
So she was the head coach for girls. So I was trying to balance both assistant coaching roles as I was getting my degree. And then I did 5 years of high school when I finally got my degree in '93. So I did 5 years of high school.
Head coach of high school?
High school teams, yeah. I did 3 years at South Bend St. Joe and 2 years at LaVille. And
wow.
And then what happened when I was at LaVille, there was talk within Bethel, the president, senior vice president, that Coach Lightfoot might be leaving for Division I and that they would want me to take over. But at the time of the talk, the women's job was open in '98. So they asked if Sony and I would come back and take over the girls program in '98, thinking Lightfoot was going to leave. And so that was the whole intention. I was coming to coach women's basketball for a few years and then take over the men's program. And Lightfoot has not left.
And you're still the coach of the girls.
Yes.
And how many national championships have you won?
We've been blessed to win 6 national titles. So.
Praise the Lord. That's awesome. How do you disciple as you coach? I coached Alyssa Tupin, and she played for you, and I did a show with her, and she shared the time that she got in trouble for drinking and how you handled it. And I want you to talk about why you did that. I'm understanding now why you did the agreement and things. But her parents were on an anniversary trip, so she comes over to shoot with me, and I'm rebounding. And I said, "How are things going?" And then she said, "I'm in trouble." I said, "Well, let's sit down." So we had a couple-hour talk. But I'd like to hear about it from your perspective.
Well, when I became a coach, I wanted to impact these kids' lives and not live the life I did. I drank, I partied, I had a bad lifestyle. And one of the things in coaching is I wanted to be a disciplinarian and preach it to them. I mean, you guys are old enough, you know what's right, you know what's wrong. But if you screw up, I'm going to discipline you.
Sure.
And I have a rule at Bethel that if a player of mine gets into trouble, they face student development first. When that's all done, then they face me. And the student development are a little more compassionate. They'll suspend an athlete 20% of the season. Well, then I add 30 more to it. So their first offense is 50% of the season.
Wow.
Now, that's half the season. So the timing of the story with Alyssa, they got in trouble in mid-January. Well, 50% of what our season is 15 games. Well, we only had 12 left. So I dismissed all 7 girls. So that's 2 starters and my top 2 subs that I lost in mid-January. And the blessing of the whole thing is we still won a national title without them that year. Hopefully whoever's watching or whoever gets the wind of this in coaching, a little tip for them. My problem coaching in my early years is I would coach as a former basketball player, as a former athlete, a former competitor. Well, that's not true. I'm always a competitor, but a former athlete. If you have any passion to coach, you need to take the approach as a teacher. You need to teach the kids. You need to teach the game.
Love that.
And I think you will lose that anger and that competitive intensity if you take that approach. And that's something John Wooden preached in his books, is you be a teacher. You don't see teachers pointing the finger at kids in the classroom, or hopefully you're not, and yelling at them in front of everyone.
Right.
But coaches seem like they have a green light. And that's something I did early. And Alyssa faced some of that. And that's something that became an awareness that was just, that I was brought to my attention by her dad, by other people, by my administrators, that I need to tone it down a bit with girls. And that's something that's always a learning curve for male coaches over female players.
I understand completely. I studied the Hebrew word discipline, which is also, disciple, a learner in Proverbs. And I think it's really simple. The context of it, it's to teach, train, test, transform. Teach, just like you're saying. Train, you give them the drills after you've taught them to train the skills. Test is like the scrimmage, and the impurities come to the top, and then you correct that. And transform, your job's to get yourself out of the job. You want them to be able to make the decisions in the heat of the moment. And but I see a lot of coaches want to teach and then just teach and correct, and then they don't do the train and test. But you're doing it all. I love how you had her sign an agreement and the other players sign an agreement to show their commitment. One of the things that she and I talked about was, I said, you're going to look back on this. And I said, I just can't foresee you looking back on this and feeling good about it if you don't stay. I said, everybody can quit. Anybody can quit anytime. They all do it. I said, but it takes something inside you to have endurance and to work through it. And I said, you'll always look back and be satisfied that you did. Coach Jody Martinez, blessings to you. Thank you for being with us.
That was a pleasure. It's such a pleasure.
Well, I hope you've been blessed by Coach Martinez's story of restoration. If you have never received the forgiveness of Christ, never have it appropriated to your life, I'd encourage you today to just pray to God, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I want to make you Savior and Lord of my life. You see, every sin, everything that's been done against you, everything that you've done against other people and against God has been paid for at the cross of Jesus Christ. And as you fully surrender your heart, your desires, and your life to Him, He will make you new, and He will use you to forgive others and show them Christ's restoration. May God bless you as you walk Restoration Road.